Chapter 4: Eva's Spiritual Awakening. The spring waned, and summer's scorching sun came, ripening vegetation, seemingly a greater yield than any previous year for the Grant family. Heretofore the burden of the truck garden had rested upon Lucy Grant, but she had been quite ably assisted by the twins, and also by the older boy, so that Robert Grant soon found he could depend upon his children, and by giving them a little supervision, the garden, which had been planned in the spring by the mother, was well cared for by the children. The children took pride in their labor. They did not forget to cultivate the flowers which Mrs. Grant had loved so much. And the garden not only yielded good things for the table, but also a blending of colors most pleasing to the eye. The sweet pea vines were carefully trained on a trellis which Harry took pride in erecting. Nasturtium, petunias, and the purple pansy bloomed together in a bed which had been carefully prepared. And the early autumn flowers, the aster, cosmos, and chrysanthemum, were also carefully tended. Mr. Grant was not slow in observing how interested the children were, and he spent many hours with them in the garden, which gave him an appreciation for his children, such as he had never before had. He showed no less interest in the flower garden than in the truck patch, and this seemed to bring out the better part of his nature, and the hours spent with the children passed very pleasantly for all. They were really enjoyed and looked forward to with eager expectancy, as he had no one now upon whom he could shift his own responsibility. His evenings were spent at home with the children, and when the 18th Amendment closed the saloon of the little village, his money no longer found its way over the bar, and there were new dresses for the girls, new suits for the boys, and new shoes for all. Kind neighbors and friends were not slow in instructing the girls, and rendering assistance whenever needed, and soon the girls became good little housekeepers. They were good cooks and learned to make their own dresses and garments for their little brothers. How busy they all were! There was the rush of mornings to prepare breakfast, then the milking, the feeding of the little chicks, doing up the morning's work in the house, then preparing the noonday meal. Neva tried in every way possible to shield Eva as her mother had done. So always did the harder tasks and left the lighter work for Eva to do. The dishwashing, keeping the house in order, and the mending were all left to her. The darning of socks and stockings was always a loathsome task for her, and many times temptation was strong for her to shirk this task. One day she hurriedly darned her father's socks, rushing through that she might join the other children in the yard. There was no neatness about them when she hurriedly placed them in the bureau drawer, but when she did this, she caught sight of a garment which had been her mother's, and immediately she heard the last words her mother spoke to her. Mama can always depend on her little Eva. A sting of pain went through her heart. Tears sprang to her eyes, and with a guilty conscience she again picked up her father's socks, taking out the work which she had done. She did not lay them aside again until she had darned them neatly. Then, as she placed them in the drawer for the second time, she said, "Yes, Mama, you could always depend on your little Eva, and I mean to make others feel that they can depend on me too." Then, kneeling beside a chair, she buried her face in her arms, where Neva found her some time later sobbing as only one can sob, whose heart hungers for the loving touch or the sound of a voice that has been stilled by death. No one knew of the battle Eva had fought and won, but she and God. But she had won a great victory in early youth, which helped her to be an overcomer in later years. The summer advanced, and Mr. Grant had plowed his corn for the last time. This gave him a few days of leisure time, and he told the girls one morning while eating breakfast, if they could get a neighbor to care for the cow and chickens, they could spend a few days with their aunt in St. Elmo, and he would take the boys and visit a relative in the northern part of the state, one whom he had not seen for a number of years, and had given him an urgent invitation to pay him a visit. The girls found the neighbors glad to care for the cow, as their own cow was giving no milk at that time, and they were glad to get the milk for their family's use. So Friday morning, Mr. Grant and the children drove into town, leaving the team, and the girls at the aunt's and Mr. Grant and the two boys boarded the train for a few days' visit away from home. The aunt lived near a family by the name of Rhodes who had two daughters, Lucy and Anna. Lucy was the same age of the Grant twins, and Anna 2 years older. As the girls had often visited their aunt, An acquaintance had been made, which ripened into warm friendship. And when the Rhodes girls heard that the Grant twins were there, they came over, inviting them to go with them to a tent meeting then in progress, and informing them that they had been attending and that both of them were saved. This sounded like some strange story to Eva, but she listened as they told of the great crowds that were attending the meeting, and numbers that were being saved in each service. With the aunt's permission, the twins ate supper with the Rhodes family and went with them to the services that evening, which were in charge of Mrs. Massey, an evangelist from a distant town. The tent was crowded, and as Mrs. Massey rose to address that great crowd of eager listeners, something stole over Eva, and she sat as one spellbound, listening to the story of God's love, compassion and mercy, as well as his judgments and his wrath. As she listened, she decided in her heart, "When I am 18, I mean to be a real, true saint, and try to be the kind of woman Mrs. Massey is." An invitation hymn was sung, and Eva, glancing at Neva, saw tears rolling down her cheeks and her body trembling as with a chill. A number went forward for prayer, and as Lucy Rhodes laid her hand upon Neva's shoulder, saying, "Go, Neva, you will never regret it," Eva saw her sister, too, bow at the mercy seat from which she arose a few moments later, with a glow of joy and peace upon her face. But no amount of persuading could be used to get Eva to yield. She had decided, "When I am 18, I shall then be a real saint." The meeting closed on Sunday evening, and Mr. Grant returned Monday, taking the girls back home with him. On learning of Neva's conversion, he laughed and made all kinds of sport, causing her very much trouble. Neva read her mother's Bible daily, and when she informed her father that she intended to be baptized, he flew into a rage, forbidding her this privilege, and not permitting her to leave the place for a number of weeks. Her mother's Bible disappeared also and was never found. This proved too much for the poor child, and she gave up in despair. This was a hard blow for Eva, for she had admired her sister so much, for the decision she had made to serve the Lord, but thought there was something in conversion so desirable that one would keep it through all circumstances. She had seen her poor, dear mother kept through so much that this was a hard blow to her indeed. But still, her heart assured her, "When I am 18, I mean to be a real, true saint." God saw the honesty of her heart, and the seed that had been sown by the evangelist was finding fertile soil in which to germinate and bring forth fruit in due season. School time came on, and the children were very busy indeed. It was a rush of mornings to do the work, then pack their lunch and walk 1.5 miles to school, then rush home in the evening to prepare the evening meal and do the chores. But each had their special work to do and did it. The cold weather proved too much for Eva, and many times she was compelled to remain at home and content herself with watching her brothers and sister off to school, and she unable to attend.